HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories. More people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
Like we always do at this time. Sir Charles.
Miss Mac.
Back once again, yet another Sunday.
Good Sunday.
Make it do what it do, Miss Max, for
That's
the
right.
good people. Because they could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us and we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how to reach us. IMHO Talk Show on all your favorite platforms, wherever you stream FM, wherever you stream live online video and all that good stuff. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Is there anywhere they can't catch us, Miss Max?
I don't think so.
that'd be a better way for me to say
we got all our bases covered.
I think so. I hope so.
Worst case, you can just come on knock on the door at the station.
That's right. That's right. If you're in a local listening area, you know the flagship station, WVAI 101 Jams. Shouts out to the home team here. And how you doing today, though, Miss Max? Good afternoon.
Good. It's a good Sunday. I was able to get in a little bit of church before coming in today.
That's always good.
But
likewise.
Yeah. But I'm feeling good. I'm excited about the show. Excited to have all of our listeners back with us. Some old ones, some new ones. We appreciate you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to our guest today.
Yes, indeed. Likewise. And so I guess this is a good time as we get to our first conversation, our first guest, for me to first tell you, Miss Max, happy Women's History Month.
You got a applause or something going on? Thank you. Give me that. I want all that.
I got you. And then like some folks here, Women's History Month, and know that it's March. But then I ran across that April is actually set aside, sort of designated as an awareness for Black women's history in particular. What you think about that? I mean, I guess that's good or bad. I mean, it could be a little inclusive if we celebrate all the women together in March, but you know how I feel. Like the spot in my heart I have for Black women. The mother of the earth. So separating and having designated celebration doesn't bother me. But March, April, every day we're gonna celebrate women.
I mean, I appreciate it and everything like that. But if I'm being completely honest, all these months and days acknowledging somebody or something, it can get a little exhausting. It can.
Yeah.
I'm
too
not,
many holidays.
It's a lot going on. Like it's National Alphabet Month. It gets a little bit exhausting.
Everything.
But no, I appreciate it though. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we're much more than acknowledging ourselves for 30 days or so. And that's, honestly speaking, that's for every individual. So it is incumbent upon you to know who you are and stand in that truth.
That's right. And I think holidays are a time you kind of set apart as a reminder. But everyday things are important, should be recognized. Sure. And you mentioned alphabet. So what a great segue, Max. Because we have an educator with us.
I did that on purpose. You see, I did that there.
We have none other than Charlottesville City Schools Teacher of the Year, coming to you from Charlottesville Area's Technical Educational Center. None other than Miss ADRIANE Butler. Miss Butler, thank you for joining us and congratulations.
Welcome. Yes, welcome to the show. Congratulations.
And you know what, Max? Don't sound like her mic is working.
No.
See what's going on here, Miss Butler.
Oh, how about now?
Thankful to be here. It's still a little low. We're gonna have to work on that. But yeah. So you can keep talking for us. You go ahead and set it up, Max. Your first question. I'm gonna get her microphone working.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that you're here. It did my heart equally happy to know that we were celebrating our own.
Yes.
So grateful for that. I love walking into, I'm relatively new to the Charlottesville City School system, but I love walking into our school, walking down our school hallways and seeing representation. It is certainly important that our kids see people that look like them doing things that they may aspire to do. But it is also equally important to see our counterparts, to have our counterparts see us in positions.
Yes.
That a bias or whatnot may kind of jade their way of looking at those type of things. And so I'm happy about it.
Yes,
Thank you for being here.
Thank
And we
you.
certainly want to talk about, we'll give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, talk about your history here in Charlottesville and Charlottesville City Schools. But just know that for every student, we appreciate what you do.
I'm grateful. I'm
Yeah.
very thankful to be here. Thankful.
Yeah. So go ahead, Charles.
I was going to say, how about we start off with how it feels to be recognized, right? Like,
Wow.
The award itself. For those that don't know, like maybe, let us know like how that process works as far as the nomination and like what you were recognized for, as far as like what place in education that you have here that you were recognized for.
Well, first, I'm very grateful.
Mhm.
It's humbling to be recognized for
Mhm.
your work.
How many years in the school system?
I've been working in the school system over about 23 years.
Okay.
It's been about
Okay.
23, almost 24 years.
Mhm.
And I grew up in this area and am thankful to be recognized for
Mhm.
it. It's very humbling. Working with the students over the years, I started actually at MACA years ago, but my position worked within the school system. And with this being recognized Teacher of the Year as an educator, it was my colleagues at K-Tech that first nominated me. And then I had to go through a process where I would have to answer some questions and tell a little bit about my background and my career. And there was a committee within the school division that selected me among my other colleagues in the different schools as the Educator of the Year for Charlottesville City Schools. I do have to say, when I'm recognized for that, it also does not come alone, because as an educator, you're built up by your colleagues. And every educator in this role, you do this for a reason. It's your passion to see students grow and develop. And so there's so many educators that may not be recognized specifically as the Educator of the Year, but they are Educators of the Year every day. And I'm grateful for that.
That's right. That's right. Now, was it, everybody's a little different with that. So when you had to kind of give your resume, so to speak, like, are you normally a humble person, or did you have that CV ready and like, look at, this is what I do?
That's a great question, because I have to say I'm very to myself. I've always been that humble, quiet person. But I also am a person who I believe in God, and I ask God to help his light shine through me every day. And it's funny, this year I thought I said that, and then it came back on me because I've gotten recognition that I wasn't expecting to get. And I thought, I asked for this, and God is letting his light shine through me, and I want to make sure I'm honoring and respecting him through that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So a question came to me while you were talking, and this is a difficult one.
Yes.
Some people are not going to like that I'm going to ask this question. But in light of the current political, social climate, I'm sure a lot of people were nominated. And some were, I'm sure, very supportive of you having won this award. Others may view it as a DEI thing. Which is full with a lot of bull. But anyway, so what is that something you've dealt with, considered at all in this nomination or award? What are just your views in general?
This is what I will say. I believe in a old hymn. It's may the work I've done speak for me.
Okay.
And when I was honored with this, I was at home because I was on leave. I had a recent surgical procedure, and I got a text from one of my former colleagues and say, Adrian, have you looked on Facebook and seen all the comments for your recognition? Well, I'm not a Facebook person.
Okay.
So I went on our school website and I saw all the comments from people that I work with now, and people that I worked with, and students and families that I worked with, and I could see them across the board. And may the work I've done speak for me.
There you go.
So in that sense, I would say I honestly didn't have to say anything. It was there, right there in front of my eyes. In fact, I got teary-eyed, and I would have to stop for a while, and then I'd go back and look at more comments. So I would say in that sense, the work I've done, I'm thankful to say it is speaking for me. And so that support came across the board. And I can't, of course, determine what other people are thinking in their head, but right there visually before my eyes, the support came across the board. And people who I worked with years ago were making comments. And so I'm very grateful in that sense. So I would say there are things out there that other people may think. I don't know. It hasn't come directly to me. But in that sense, it was very visual to me.
Very clear. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because there are folks who manipulate that into saying that individuals are given opportunities, of course, just because. But like you said, there's evidence of the job that you've done and how well you've done it. So appreciate you.
Absolutely. And we are speaking with Charlottesville City Schools Teacher of the Year, ADRIANE Butler. And so we also have K-Tech. And I think some folks remember that K-Tech has been through a lot recently. There was even time, I think just a few years ago, to where they were talking about whether to close the doors, and it was debate over who was going to manage it, county schools, city schools, that sort of thing. But for those who are familiar with K-Tech, just give us that overview of what K-Tech provides our local community.
K-Tech has high school programs as well as adult education programs. Our programs help students. We say we do workplace readiness. So there's specific programs that we have for students that will help them develop their skills in particular subject areas so that they can be ready for the workforce. It might be in electricity, carpentry, auto services, tech, vet science, firefighting, cosmetology, culinary arts, nurse aid. We have different programs in the high school program, excuse me. And then we also have adult programs too.
Awesome. That is good stuff. And your role there, tell us a little bit more about like what you do on a day-to-day when it comes to the services that you provide, whether it be the high school students or maybe an adult from the community. Right. How do you interact with the population?
Specifically, I support the high school program. We do have an adult program, but there's a separate, office or division for that piece. So I mainly work with the high schools. We have students from Albemarle County, Charlottesville schools, and Fluvanna schools, and we're expanding. We also have homeschool students come. So I work daily with the other high schools. We call our base schools, where our students come from, and I provide support for the students mental health wise, emotionally, but also provide connections with them with their base schools, how the students doing, support services that we have available for them, and connecting them so that the school knows how they're doing at K-Tech, what we can do to continue to recruit students for our schools. We do tours. I do a lot of tours with students who are looking at K-Tech as an option. Some students don't know about K-Tech, so we want to make sure we're opening our doors to all students so that they know what services we have available to them.
And I'm sorry, and I may have missed this. When you say base schools,
so for example, we have students from Charlottesville High, so that would be their student's base school, or a student from Monticello High, so that would be that student's base school.
So you serve the students. What I'm really getting to is that you serve the students, city school students, as well as those in surrounding counties.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are Charlottesville area community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful resource.
A great resource, and like Max already mentioned, the potential implications of DEI. Right now, let me say that I've always been a great proponent of trades and technical education and whatnot. And I'm sure you probably recall, like my generation coming through high school, like within the 90s, there seemed to be a huge push, and you can sort of see the shift in our educational system to where it felt like a push for everybody to go to the biggest universities you can get into. And I think also, like, economically, it seemed like the time to where we became more, as a country, more consumers than producers, right? And so, like, exports went through the roof and all that stuff because a lot of folks just didn't have skills. It was all about it almost felt like you weren't looked at as a success,
right?
Unless you went to a 4-year or you got you got some sort of grad degree and things like that. So I'm curious if you feel that technical training is separate from when it comes to any sort of DI initiatives that our school systems may be facing right now, or do you feel like that it could be at risk?
I would say working with students, we have to think about what do our students need and want. And when I think about K-Tech, we have students.
Good place to start, by the way.
Yeah. And we have students who are at K-Tech who their goal is to go to college. We have dual enrollment classes where students get college credit for. We also have programs where students may not desire to go to college and they're going straight into the workforce, or they want to continue their post-high support and education through a community college or through our adult education program. Whatever that path may be for that student, as far as with K-Tech and other programs, we have to look at what do our students need. We also have students of various backgrounds at K-Tech. So when I think about DEI, I think about at K-Tech, we're not looking at what does that student need and want? What is that desire of that student? So I truly believe K-Tech will continue to be around because it fulfills a need for so many students. We have students who really come to K-Tech and they soar because there's a lot of hands-on piece. There's a lot of there's also a lot of academic work in there. We provide academic classes for them also, like English and government and econ and personal finance, so they can also take a few academic classes there. But as far as the DEI piece, I truly believe K-Tech is one of those programs that meets the diverse needs of many students. We have students of various backgrounds. So I truly believe K-Tech will continue to be around because there's that need there.
Awesome. Definitely hope so.
And so these programs are 2 4-year programs? And
we have at K-Tech, our high school programs, there are some that are 1-year programs. And then there are programs that are 2-year programs. So we mainly serve students who are 11th and 12th graders, and sometimes we have 10th graders also.
And then students take the certification at the completion of the program and are ready for the job market pretty much upon graduation.
Good stuff. That's awesome. So I bet that some of the kids light up as well, like when they get the education on, or when they're informed about what the opportunities that the technical education can actually bring them, right? Because it surprises some folks that a lot of times you start with a higher salary even, and you don't have as much as a school debt. Like if you go to a tech school, you pick up a trade or whatnot. Like, so what's that process like as far as the communication to students to show them the offerings and availability? Because again, I'm sure that there's some who also feel that pressure. And you, if you put sort of like your counselor hat on, like I'm sure there's some who feel the pressure, right? Of like, well, I really am passionate about this trade. Like I really want to pick this up. I feel like I have these skills, but they may even have a family expectation that like I can't do, like I gotta get this, degree or whatnot, but I don't feel like I really need to. Like, what is that counseling session like, or how do you all communicate to kids when they're making those choices?
We work closely, with the base schools. A lot of our students that come to K-Tech have peers who have been at K-Tech or know other people. My brothers went to K-Tech when they were in school, and they've heard things about K-Tech, but we really are starting to see the importance of starting younger so that students know what's available to them, educating parents on what K-Tech provides for students so that they know that there are opportunities beyond universities and colleges. We also have students who are starting in 8th grade that come to do tours with us so that they can see what opportunities that we have, so that when they're starting to think of their educational plan with their school counselor, they say K-Tech is the place I want to go, to make sure that they're taking the correct classes so that they'll be prepared at the moment it's their time to be at K-Tech, that they can have all those classes in place for them and they'll be able to take those courses at K-Tech.
And let's talk about capacity. How soon, and I don't know if I experienced this with city schools or when me and my family lived out in Greene County, but how soon does an individual who may be interested in attending classes at K-Tech need to get on the wait list and let people know that that's what they're interested in?
Sooner the better.
Okay.
Many of our 8th graders are starting to look at high school and how they're going to plan out their courses. So that is a great time to talk to your parents, to talk to your school counselor about what you want to do for your career. Some students don't know what they want to do, of course, and that's why we do the tours, because they don't know what opportunities are there at K-Tech, or they don't know what opportunities are available in their community. So giving them that exposure is a big piece for them. But I will also say we have students that come to K-Tech their 12th grade year, and so it's not, I would say, any opportunity that you can talk to your school counselor to say, this is what I'd like to do, or I'd like to explore this, is a great time to start doing that. So 8th grade is a great time to start thinking about K-Tech.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, Charles, I mean, I'll keep going in the same vein of kind of like the additional services that students need. You said that you're a school counselor, have been for many years. And before we came on air for this interview, we talked about what our students need aside from being prepared to go into the workforce or what they need after graduation. And it's a lot, right?
Yes.
Elaborate that on a little bit more from the counselor's perspective.
Yes. I worked with students beginning in preschool because at our elementaries, we currently have students that are preschool age students.
Mhm.
And as a school counselor, when I was in elementary school, many of our students are carrying a weight on them.
Mhm.
Many of us as adults are carrying weight on us. If we don't have the coping skills to develop and to be able to deal with those weights that we're carrying, it's very hard to function in a classroom and to develop your skills in math and reading when you're also carrying other weight on your shoulder.
And you're recognizing this
Yes.
preschool, kindergarten level.
Yes.
Wow.
On up.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the elementary setting. One of the things I loved about being a school counselor is I would do life skill lessons with every student in every classroom every week.
Mhm.
I don't want to assume students have coping skills.
Mhm.
There are various challenges we all come across, and some of those challenges can come unexpectedly out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And to have coping skills, it can really help you with every aspect of your life, whether it's having listening skills, whether it's being able to have self-control, whether it's being able to have problem-solving skills. They're skills
Express
that
your
we all
emotions.
need.
Mhm.
And for me, always having that opportunity to help students develop those life skills, those coping skills, has been something from preschool on up that I've seen students really need.
Mhm.
So in this field, not just the students, but the adults, we all have stressors in our life. So being able to have those skills to help us manage that is a big piece.
Mhm. And so schools are kind of, exacerbating the issue that these students are dealing with outside of school. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So starting in our home.
Right.
Starting in our home.
Right. And that is communicating with each other.
Mhm.
It is a key for when a parent will tell me, Miss Butler, we're dealing with this at home, or, my mother is sick right now and it's been very challenging for our family. When you hear a parent come and share that information with you, it helps you see, okay, now I see why, this student is struggling with focusing right now. Right now their grandmother is very sick and this is a person they care about. I can understand why they're dealing with this right now. When you see a family going through some financial challenges, when you hear those things, it can help you understand your students.
Right. And how much of that weight is for the school system to bear?
That is a challenge that we constantly are dealing with. It takes a village. When things happen, often, whether it's in the community or wherever, people are constantly looking for who can we blame or who can we put that on. It takes a village. It is something we all need support with. In education, we do this because we have a passion to help our students do the best that they can do, but we can't do it alone. We need the support of our community. So having those connections has been a big piece. I have always loved having partnerships with agencies and building trust and being able to refer families that might need additional support and having that connection and network with other agencies that I can say, let's contact this person so that we can get you some support with this. So it does take a village.
And we're actually, real quick, Charles, I'm going to have a candidate for city school board on the show later today. And so I preface that with saying, do you feel like the school board is supporting the schools, those issues in a sufficient manner, or what more can they do? Is it come down to a funding thing? Is it come down to a human capital, a staffing thing? How can you be better supported, or the schools be better supported in better servicing the students?
That's a challenging question. Partnerships are a big piece for us. I would say right now it is very challenging because we are dealing with a lot of mental health issues in our schools.
Across the board.
Across the board, and I think we're adjusting to see how can we provide more support. In the schools, we have what's called morning meetings. And those are things that are supported from our school boards, that we have time for our students to come together and be able to develop the sense of community. So I see that we are working towards that. I think it's a constant sense of being able to reevaluate yourself and see, where's that need at? What do we need to do to make adjustments? So I think that's a challenge that we all have in the school system, not just the school board, but in every aspect. We're trying to adjust to how can we support our students more.
Yeah, and a nuance of that is when we think about the community partnerships, as you're referencing, and we talk about mentorships and things of that sort. Like, I can only imagine, and even speaking from when I remember my own experience in high school, that presenting something like a technical skill and training could be something that a child needs. Like, maybe they're just disengaged with the normal, school bell schedule. And they just need something to grab their attention to attach. So I'm curious, is K-Tech ever used in that regard, to sort of maybe try to figure out, like, hey, like, what is it that, like, that you want to get from your education?
Yes, it's a great opportunity for students to explore the options that are available to them. Students will come there and they will find this can be a place for students to really develop their skills and see, like, this is really what I want to do. And that's why we do the tours, because sometimes students really don't know what's out there for them. And then we had a tour the other day and we had students come in, and one was very quiet. Just, you could tell, just kind of taking in, what K-Tech was about and the atmosphere. And by the time that student left the building, that student was talking, I hadn't heard the student say anything, smiling, because they saw something at K-Tech that really sparked their interest. So we try to help them. They get to hear from the students. We have the students really share what it's like to be a K-Tech student, what they experience. And I think them hearing the students talk about how they developed themselves at K-Tech, how my instructor really worked with me. I really came in not feeling good about, myself or confident in my abilities. And then I came here and my instructor really worked with me. Everyone needs something different. And to be able to find a place where you feel like this is something that works for me is a great place for our students. And so we found that K-Tech is that place for many of our students.
So how is K-Tech funded? Is it part of the local school budget, or is it city funded?
It is part of the school system. So yes.
Okay. And see, and that's the side of DEI that I was thinking of, because when you think about the threat that our Department of Education is under, right? And then, so when you think about sort of skills because, if we're being totally real about it, we seem to be moving to a place to where, like, public education isn't important in the eyes of our federal government. So it's like, if you can pay to learn a skill or trade, then you'll be okay. So that's more what I was thinking. And, and God forbid that happens. But, when you look at the attack that public education is under right now, like, you would think that we definitely need to put a hedge around programs such as K-Tech,
Yes.
And do you all, out of curiosity, track, like, I don't know if efficacy is the right word, but the rate once the students graduate, are they getting jobs in the industry where they've been certified? And yes,
we try to check in with our students to see, do you have a current job, or are you going on to a university? Are you where their next steps?
And you're getting a lot of good shout outs from our listeners online as well. Folks, glad to hear you online and shouting out all the great services. So we do have one question as well. That's what's the percentage of students that take a trade that turn their experience into businesses? Do y'all keep those stats?
I honestly can't say I know the percentage off the top of my head. So I don't want to say something that's incorrect.
Right. Is that something that's like that you would say is accomplished more often than not?
Yes. Yes. And part of our programs, especially when we have a 2-year program, their second year, many of our students go into the community and we do what's called work-based learning, where they actually, so for example, an auto tech student might work at a local auto service company in Charlottesville. So we may not see them in our doors every day, but they're developing those skills. And it's a safe way for them us to keep a connection with our partners and for the students to develop those skills.
Yeah. That's definitely a great community partnership that if anybody's listening, I think should happen if it's not already. We think about like CIC, right? And you think about the chamber and and folks like that, to where you have those businesses and whatnot that provide those trainings and things. So,
yes.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So we are delighted to be joined by none other than Charlottesville City School Teacher of the Year, Miss ADRIANE Butler from K-Tech, the Charlottesville Area Technical Education Center. So, Miss Butler, what I read was that you get to represent the city schools for being Teacher of the Year at like a regional or like a national Teacher of the Year program.
I'm hearing there's a state program, so that's the next step. So I'm representing for Charlottesville City Schools for the Virginia recognition. So I have to go to that next step. So we'll see where that goes.
That's awesome. Well, you're a great representation for us to have.
Look at God.
That's
yes.
right.
Look at God. Thankful. Yes.
Right.
Very grateful.
Yep. So K-Tech, I mean, you said a lot. I'm curious, any closing words in regards to any of the any upcoming events that you may have coming up for students or for the public that may want to learn more about it?
Well, I would say to parents, if you want to know more about K-Tech, please look on our website. You'll be able to contact me, give me a call. It is a great opportunity for students to really see if they want to go further into their education or look at other opportunities for themselves that maybe they haven't considered. K-Tech is a great place for that. So I welcome families calling in, emailing me, asking more about what we do at K-Tech.
Great.
And adults as well.
Adults as well, please. Yes.
Good stuff. Cool. Miss Mac.
Right. Nothing more to say. We appreciate you. We truly thank you so much, because you're handling our future. And they're not always in good hands, but like you said, may the work you've done speak for you, and we trust that you're doing a good job for the city schools.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Yes. Stay with us, family. In my humble opinion, we'll be right back right after the break.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, Black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories. More people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all of these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
It's Max.
In the booth, in the building,
Yeah.
one more again. Man, for this, once again, kicking it off the celebration of this Women's History Month, Black Women's History and all that. You know, Max, that was a great way to bring it in, none other than Miss ADRIANE BUTLER, an educator.
Feel
right?
good.
Because we all educate in our own right, because we all are an influence. We are a book to somebody. Somebody's reading us.
That's right.
So for her to get
even
that
if you don't know.
Yeah, that's the ones you got to worry about. You never know who's watching. Yep. And that's why we're gonna continue the show as well. Next hour, we're gonna be joined by none other than our local NBC news anchor, Miss ERIN Brown. Happy to have her with us so she can share her journey through journalism and media, and what it all means to her, especially in these times we live in right now. I think this is going to be fun to pick her brain as well when it comes to with the madness. How do you stay professional? How do you keep because of course, like, we have a urban talk show, so people expect us to come on here and run off at the mouth. But when you are a news reporter,
right,
you are trained to keep your opinion out of it.
That's right.
You just got to report the news.
That's right.
So so curious to hear her talk from a personal level. It should be good.
And like, I'm not but so many years young, but there's only two television news stations here in Charlottesville.
Yeah, technically, because one of them owns like 3 different channels.
Yeah, and some of them have looked one way for a really long time. And so it was very apparent when they started to diversify. And it's all a great thing. But I'm sure it doesn't come without the challenges when you don't fit the norm and kind of making some new trails. So yes, it will be exciting to talk to her.
Yes, indeed. And closing the show with with our little sister. Hope she don't mind us calling her that. Our baby sister. None other, no stranger here to the community. That's right, Miss ZYAHNA Bryant.
Yes.
She has thrown her hat in the ring for the Charlottesville School Board. So props to her. And we definitely got to have that conversation out of all she does, all she's involved in, all the great work. What was the decision-making process for this one? To get caught up in city government.
I mean, I'm interested as to why she started city council and I didn't just jump straight to not city council. Why she started with the school board and didn't jump straight to city council. But maybe it's stepping stones. There's a process.
It's definitely a process. And I'm gonna ask her because I'm always curious. And a family, y'all definitely chime in the comments as well with any questions or comments you have for today's show and guests. Because I'm always curious too when it comes to folks, particularly like activists who then get into the political ring. Because it's school board, but it's still politics. You know what I mean? At the core of it. Because I liken that to say someone who does something for the love because they have a passion to do it versus making a living off of it, or turn it into a job. I guess maybe a better way to relate that. You know what I mean? Because when you do something because you love it, it feels fun.
Right.
But then when it becomes more serious, like a job, that sort of takes sort of the passion out of it sometimes because it's more regimented. So I'm always just curious.
Ties your hands in some way.
You ties your hands. You got somebody to answer to per se. Right. Yes, I'm always curious and within that thought process.
Right. Well, I mean, needless to say, there are individuals who believe that advocates for social justice, things like that, shouldn't hold certain positions just because they're an advocate first, and they feel like in some ways that hinders the work in other arenas.
Right.
So yes, I'm sure that certainly will be a topic of discussion as she campaigns for school board. I think she's good for it. And all the work that I've seen her do thus far is much needed work for this community at large. So
that is spot on. So Max, as we close the first hour of today's show of Women's History, when you think about that, tell us who comes to mind first with Miss Max when you think about historic women. Who's an influence to Miss Max? And then maybe even what's that legacy that Miss Max wants to leave?
Let's see.
I know it's a bunch. You can just throw one up.
Honestly, if I'm really speaking truthfully, it'd probably have to be my maternal grandmother.
Okay.
Name is Gussie Inez Tibbs. She lived to be, I think, about 93 years old. Was definitely the matriarch of our family. And honestly speaking, the best person that I knew. She's very selfless. She was always feeding the family, and I mean preparing meals for 40, 50 people, like nothing to it. You know how grandmamas do it. She was always full of wisdom, always steady for the course. And I grew up under that. And had the opportunity to be able to observe her live out her life in that manner.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we need more of that, because I can bet that those influences is what you carry on because you saw the example and you want to try to leave that as well. And you know, like I was just, it was crazy, Max, because I was just thinking just yesterday, I was in like another rural area that I didn't grow up in, and just talking to some of the older guys, like it made me really think about like the times when I grew up, and just having those elders, the grandmother, the uncles, and stuff like that, and that sense of community, right? You know, that we used to have. I don't really know if we have anymore, because we're so distracted, right? It's like we're almost victims of our own success, because everybody got technology, everybody, you know, got a career, working on careers, and it's like that family element is just so important. And I think passing that down and us regaining ownership of that importance of family and that legacy. Oh man, it's like there's nothing like it. It's nothing like it. And I think our youth nowadays I think we're doing them a disservice.
True. No, I certainly agree with you. And my family's a testament to that, because unfortunately when grandma went on to glory, a lot of traditions and unity that existed just because she did dissolved. And yes, our kids don't know that in the way that the older and aren't able to experience that and learn to value it in the way that older generations are. But we have a responsibility, right? That's right. We have a responsibility, and if we, you know, you can toss a penny into a crowd and hit, or rock into a crowd and hit more than one person who would say how important family is. However, you know, there's work, there's actions that go behind that, and unfortunately, that's the part that we're lacking.
And community, right? Family community is kind of strong. Family builds strong community. That's right. So let's go ahead and take this thing to break, y'all. And like, go hug a Black woman you love. How about that? IMHO Talk Show.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
I to the ism, H to the Izzo Talk Show. Like we always do it this time, Sir Charles.
Max.
And as promised, we are continuing to celebrate and acknowledge some of our some of the greatness that we have even right here in Charlottesville when it comes to Women's History Month.
Yes.
And so, right now, Miss Max and I have with us none other than Miss ERIN Brown. She is a lead news anchor over at our NBC channel, NBC 29. Thank you for joining us, ERIN.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie, because I'm used to asking the interview questions, not the other way around. Yeah. I'm sure you guys will go easy on me.
There's no camera. They can't see you.
Well, that's not true.
Well,
we got
yeah,
cameras.
I guess.
That's true. Yes, there are cameras. Well, they're not the cameras I'm used to.
Right.
So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. But hopefully this is much more relaxed conversation because because the onus is on us to make this conversation go well, right?
Right. Yeah.
True. Yeah. But for those that don't know Miss ERIN Brown, but by now I'm sure the majority have seen the face, they've heard the voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give us the backstory. Start wherever you want to start on the journey, right?
The journey, okay.
That led you to not only to be an NBC news anchor, but led you to Charlottesville, right?
Right.
So how did this interest, this passion for news start?
Yeah.
Where did it start?
And I knew you were going to ask that question. I should have prepared better for it. But so how did my passion for news start? I definitely grew up in a very news heavy household. Both of my parents are, I would say that they're news junkies. They always had the news on. So I just kind of consumed the news kind of just through osmosis, right? Because they were watching it, so I was watching it, and I was aware of all the stories that were happening, locally, nationally, across the globe. And I always, I didn't always want to be a TV news anchor though, watching the news, but I did admire news anchors, and I loved watching them, and I loved listening to them, and watching how they handled certain stories, and listening to like their delivery and the different intonations in their voice, and how they use certain facial expressions or hand motions to convey a certain message, or to get an idea across, or to emphasize something. So I was very meticulous in watching what they were doing, to the point where I would kind of mimic it myself. Like when I would be telling someone a story, or I remember there were moments where I would even go in my bathroom, and I would look in the mirror, and I would
with the hairbrush.
The hairbrush microphone, and I would be, imitating what I saw on TV. But at the same time, I admired what they were doing, but I never really saw myself doing it. I just thought it was really a unique thing to watch. But again, I was consuming news my whole life, from like probably 5 years old, and on.
And where'd you grow up?
Richmond.
Okay.
Richmond.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Like
so
Richmond.
we watched NBC 12. That was our station in Richmond. And so yeah, but I never really saw myself doing it. I saw myself being more so behind the cameras.
Okay.
I've always loved writing as well. So and my teachers picked up on my writing ability very young. So they would always kind of encourage my mom to get me in, writing classes and writing workshops and honors English classes. And so I always wanted to be a writer of some sort. I thought I would go take more of the like magazine route, because that's where I was headed in high school and college. But somehow, and I don't know, it could have just been by the powers that be, but somehow when I was in college, I landed an internship with ABC News.
Okay.
The network in New York.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
you're not talking about Channel 8 in Richmond?
No, we're talking about Good Morning America, World News Tonight. And again, I don't know how I landed that. I still kind of that's a wonder of my life. How did I get that internship? I don't know, but so that kind of opened the TV news doors for me, landing that internship. And then I started, I kind of veered off of the magazine route and steered more toward TV. But
I'm sorry, I got to interject. Something I don't want to overlook is that it's important, especially for our youth, to hear on how, with the passion that you had, even if it led to writing for a magazine or what have you, how integral it is to have the right classes.
Right.
Yeah. Like to have the right foundation of being taught, like the critical way to do it. So I just wanted to point it out, because that's a blessing that you have people in your corner to say, okay, like if it's what you want to do, we support it, but here's the foundation you need, as far as education.
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely got that at Radford University. I don't think I mentioned that I went to Radford, but Radford was, I think it was the perfect school for me. I didn't always recognize it at the time. But Radford was, they were very, Radford's a pretty small school. So we had a lot of small classroom sizes. And so I definitely had really close relationships with my teachers and my professors, and they were able to kind of help me. They were an integral part of steering me in the right direction, because they, they saw what I was good at. And they really helped me. They helped nourish the talents that they saw in me. So education is huge. It really is. And having the right people in your corner, that can make or break. So
and even when you mentioned high school, you mentioned being in the right English class. Right. Things like that. Yeah.
So shout out to
teachers. That's right. Yeah, we just had the city teacher of the year in here before you came in.
Oh, nice.
So
Very nice.
For sure. So we are talking to ERIN Brown, a news anchor for our NBC 29. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure we didn't overlook that. But go ahead and continue. So so you got that internship, and then what was following all this?
So, and it's, sorry to kind of ramble. It's been a long journey. It's been 10 years. So I'm kind of walking you all through a decade of my journey. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but so after I landed the internship in New York, I eventually landed a second internship with ABC in DC, which was a whole nother experience. Awesome to work in the nation's capital. So from there, so after my internships, that was about 8 months of my career, then I got into local news. I loved working at the network, but I wanted to experience local TV as well, which is, what I grew up watching, NBC 12. So my local TV news career took me all over the country. It started in Reno, Nevada, which is, that was wild. That was a wild journey. Reno, Nevada. Then I moved back to the East Coast and went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Then I went up to New England, to Burlington, Vermont. My station before Charlottesville was Peoria, Illinois. And then I moved here to Charlottesville. And when I was in Peoria, I think, I had moved around a lot. And I think I just felt myself kind of get exhausted from the hopping around. I was proud of myself for doing it because I told myself I'm going to, experience the country, and I'm going to report the news all over the country, and I'm going to be an advocate for communities all over the U.S.
It seems like that's kind of a natural progression for local news anchors in that market. They kind of
they hop around,
right,
right.
And just searching for the right thing, or just wanting to different experiences.
For me, it was just different experiences. Immersing myself in different cultures and different states, and just experiencing new places.
Okay.
But I had, by the time I was in Peoria, that was my 4th move in a very short period of time. And it just got exhausting. I felt myself kind of burning out a little bit. And I just felt that I either needed to either leave the industry or go back home and be somewhere more familiar, somewhere more comfortable. And just that was a big thing, was being familiar and comfortable, because it's a lot to kind of hop around, and you have to embrace different communities and learn about
gain their trust,
right? Exactly, gain their trust, and you have to educate yourself on the whole history, basically, of the community and the state and the issues and all. It's just it's a lot, and I didn't necessarily. I never saw myself kind of reaching that burnout point. But I did. I definitely did. And
so what kind of recentered you?
Finding this job here in Charlottesville. Yeah, I was specifically looking for a job either back here in Virginia or just somewhere on the East Coast near my family, because I have family kind of spread out throughout the East Coast: Philadelphia, Boston, New York. I wanted to go somewhere near family. But I think the best thing for me was to come back to Virginia. And I was really hoping for a job opening in Virginia. And I remember that was like my prayer at the end of 2023. I was like, I hope that next year, I can find myself somewhere near family, somewhere where I'm comfortable and happy and familiar, and somewhere where I can just kind of, I don't want to use the word settle, because it's not like I'm settling for Virginia, but I am kind of settling my
lay down some roots, maybe.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Lay down some roots and kind of just settle and start my life here, and build my personal life and my personal life here, as opposed to every 2 to 3 years hopping around. So that was my prayer.
Yes, prayer answered. So before we go deeper in that, though, we do have someone with interesting questions. So they must know you.
Okay.
Because in speaking of family and and wanting to be close, they said to ask you about your grandfather, the Tuskegee Airman.
Oh yes! Wow.
Is Grandma listening?
That's a loyal listener.
That is a great question. Yes. So yes, that is a great question. I would love to talk about my grandfather. Yes, my grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. And I shared that with, I recently went to Greenbrier Elementary for their Black History Month event, and I shared that with the students. And I was so touched by their responses to that, and also just their knowledge of the Tuskegee Airmen. I didn't know if 3rd and 4th graders necessarily knew who the Tuskegee Airmen were, but they did. They knew, and that was awesome. Really touching, because I never want that history to go away and to be forgotten. But yeah, my grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, and I wish I had more to say about that and more about him, but he passed away when I was 10 years old. So I never actually got to, unfortunately, I never really got to have conversations with him about it. But boy, I wish I could.
Right.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from like my mom and my aunts, I don't think he talked about the war very much. I think he was pretty tight-lipped about it. But just to have that
Yeah.
history in my family I'm very
Heritage.
proud,
Yeah.
proud that I am the granddaughter of a
Yeah,
Tuskegee Airman.
yeah, yeah. Props to you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could feel it though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's some things that are genetic. There's things that are just like in the atmosphere
Yeah.
of, of like when it comes to our ancestors.
Right.
Like we may have thoughts, we may have visions, and we don't even know why. And then you may find out later, like, ooh, okay, well that makes sense. now.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather like went through this or was this place, and we have those spiritual connections.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I definitely feel his spirit a lot.
Yeah.
Because he was definitely he grew up in the civil rights era, and he was out there, protesting and sitting in at counters and at lunch counters and protesting, and he was definitely a fighter. Definitely a fighter. I don't think I have as much fighter spirit in me as he did, but every now and then I'm like, okay, I can feel that. I think it's genetic, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, so you made it to, and thank you for sharing that. By the way,
Of course. Great question. Great question.
So you made it to Charlottesville, though.
Yes.
But I imagine there were bigger towns you could have went to. Maybe even more exposure, because you talked about the experience of going from place to place. But like I always envisioned too that like it was all they also are like rings on a ladder as well. It's like you may move to a bigger market and whatnot. So I'm curious on that thought process on like actual Charlottesville, like why Charlottesville?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago where I wanted to end up when I first started my career, I definitely would have said New York. That was there was nothing else that I was envisioning but New York. I love New York. My family's from North Jersey, so I've been to New York many times, and it's my favorite city. It holds a special place in my heart. But I think throughout my career, things change. Like your goals change, your aspirations change, and really, I just didn't really want the glitz and the glam like I used to. New York's a big city. There's a lot going on. And I just kind of saw myself more so I want like that community feel. And I feel like when you're in a city with 8 million people, and there's just so much going on, I feel like you kind of miss out on that. And I really wanted to just be part of a community. And I feel like you get that in smaller towns and cities. People know you, people trust you. You go to the grocery store and people come up to you and they spark conversation with you, and it's almost like you've known them for your whole life, but you're just meeting them. That's something that I think is lacking in the bigger markets. And
so let's talk about your experience at NBC 29.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been wonderful. I love my team there.
You're the morning news anchor.
Evening.
Okay.
Yeah. So I anchored the news with Steve Rappaport.
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 10, and 11.
Okay.
So you'll see me a lot. You'll see my face a lot. And I love it. I think that the team there is fantastic. I think that the news we deliver and the product we put on air is the best in the area. I may be a little biased, but I think that we just have our reporters, especially they're the ones who impress me the most. I think they just have their ear to the ground and they know what's happening, and they're quick to inform the community of what's going on, and they do it with such grace and poise, and they're really the rock stars of the operation, because they're out there in the elements, keeping everyone informed, and it's a great team to work with, and I'm so glad I got this opportunity.
And so how do you keep yourself, I'd say, like centered as a news anchor who, I mean, maybe we're more so talking about national, international news, but it also happens locally where we're always talking about what the problem is. we're always talking about something bad that happened.
Yeah,
You know, informing people, but
Right.
still, we're you know, other than maybe the weather, we're telling you where the problem is.
Right.
So how do you, you know, keep motivated and stay going in an industry like that where you may be always kind of delivering the not so good news?
Right. Yeah. I definitely, I kind of, in a self-deprecating way, I refer to myself sometimes as the bearer of bad news because that's what we, that's what we do. I mean, that's the nature of news is unfortunately to talk about, you know, the things that are, you know, to talk about bad things. You know, we're talking about house fires and car crashes, and we're talking about people losing their loved ones, and that can be very hard. It can be, you know, it definitely weighs on you, and you know, but I find myself in the moment, kind of disconnected from, which I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but like I can't fully, I have to kind of disconnect in the moment because I just have to get the information out. But with that being said, there's been multiple times where I've gone home and just completely lost it. You know, just having a breakdown, or just not even a full breakdown, just you know, letting myself feel that story and feel the impact and feel how it affected people. And you know, because I've had to talk to, you know, I've had to talk to parents who just lost a child, or you know, parents or families who lost a home in a hurricane, and you know, those are the stories that stick with you. And but you know, in the moment, the job is to get the information out, and so there is a little bit of a disconnect that happens. I can't really tap into my emotions all that much in that moment. But that doesn't mean the emotions aren't there. I just have to kind of put them aside for a second and say, okay, this is what happened today. And then, you know, when the cameras turn off, then I can
be human.
Let it out. Yeah, be human. Yeah, and let it out. So it's not easy, but and I definitely, for anyone, you know, in the industry or looking to get into the industry, I definitely would recommend having, you know, an outlet. You know, self-care or just any type of outlet where you can decompress and just kind of just take care of yourself. Just take care of yourself, because we cover some really heavy issues, really heavy stuff. And
not to interrupt, but let's talk about the beautiful part about broadcast communication. Because several years ago, I did some coursework at the Columbia School of Broadcasting for radio, and that was really spearheaded by my fascination with the art of communicating from different perspectives. Obviously, talking about radio, you do television, but there's some people out there that are going to certainly be able to connect with what I'm saying and maybe what you'll share about television broadcasting. But it is an art, and when it's right, it's beautiful. And there's something just amazing about delivering information and the manner in which it's done, like you said, when you used to kind of imitate the news anchors when you were a kid. So can you kind of tap into that and talk about that part of it a little bit?
Oh, that's a great question. Man, I don't really I don't really know I don't really know how to tackle that question, but no, it is an art form. I would say it's a, you know, you're in a sense you're performing, you know, and that's a great question.
Okay. Well, no,
you stumped me.
It's just
so you know how I would add on to that is that, like, you made me think when you were talking earlier about like your passions and your dreams, you know, when you were in high school going into college. I thought you were going to mention something about theater. Or wanting to be in front of a camera. You know, like just when I heard you talk about practicing in front of the mirror, you know, things like that. You know, so you know, like, so sort of to Max's point, you know, like then down the road hearing you talk about how you sort of have to be the on-air personality, and then off air is when you can kind of like be yourself and
Yeah.
and sort of take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Because that is a lot like the stage, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like so the news studio, even here right now on the radio, is sort of a stage.
Yeah.
And you have a job to do.
Right.
And you do have to compartmentalize.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise you
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, you'll just go crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it definitely is, you know, and you mentioned theater. I did dabble in theater a little bit as a teenager and a kid a little bit, but I was no good. I was no good. Not acting is not my thing.
Yeah.
Not at all. So, and I noticed that very quickly. I'm like, okay, this is not what I need to be doing. But there are similar.
Yeah.
The theater and you know, anytime I think you're communicating to the public, whether that's through, you know, the performing arts or, you know, journalism or public speaking, anytime you're communicating any type of information for whatever purpose, for, you know, informative reasons or for entertainment, you know, for whatever, it is a performance of some sort.
Yeah.
Let's talk about maybe the responsibility, and this is something that I mean, even I and Charles being a Black male, myself being a Black female, when we get into these type of industries where we are representative of females, Black people, and things like that, whether we choose to accept that responsibility or not, we are in some ways their mouthpiece, their representation. You know, we have an obligation to represent ourselves well. We have an obligation to represent those that we are standing with, or, you know, on the shoulders of, so to speak. And I like to think that in my case anyway, it drives me to do the best that I can possibly do. And so I wondered if that is your experience at all. I know we talked about your grandfather's legacy, but I'm sure some of that is bound to come. You're bound to carry some of that with you in your job on the day to day.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't, you know,
just carrying the weight of being like a woman. And
yes.
Yeah. That's another great question. another stumper.
Well, I'm sure that's, you know, even if we're not necessarily thinking on those things, it's bound to come up, especially if an individual works in a industry that's dominated by their counterparts or dominated by men. You know, you by default, I would think, have to represent yourself. And kind of stand up as a female, being among those who may not look like you or have the same background, things like that.
Yeah, I've definitely come across that in my career because if you remember earlier in the conversation, I mentioned that I reported in Burlington, Vermont, which is, I think it's the second whitest state in the country. And I was the only Black person in that newsroom. So I definitely felt a responsibility to make sure that Black voices were heard on that news station. And I would, you know, seek out, Black artists or Black politicians or Black entrepreneurs to highlight and to say, hey, this is what we're doing in the community. And this was also, I was also a reporter during the time of, 2020 when we had the George Floyd protest and, Black Lives Matter was really taking off. And, there was so much talk about, Black trauma. And we were just so hyper focused on the things that were bad happening in the Black community. So I really wanted to highlight and say, it's not all bad. We're Black people we're so diverse in and of ourselves, and our experiences, our talents, our lives are just, we're not just defined by that one thing, trauma. We're doing so many, we have so many beautiful stories to tell, and I just wanted to make sure that, and it was important that we talked about, you know, the things that were being brought up during that time. It's extremely important that those things were touched upon and highlighted, but let's also look at the flip side of that and look at what Black people have done despite all of the the ugly that has happened to us in this country. Like we don't have to always harp on that. We can also we can look at all the beauty and triumph that has come out of the trauma of that Black people have experienced in this country. So that's really what I set out to do. And I hope I did a good job. I really, that was my, you know, that was my focus.
Yeah, so you were trying to relay that while in Vermont, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So I can imagine, you know, the pressure that you probably felt sometimes, you know, because you're seeing this tragedy,
right?
And then you're looking around and you're like, you know, and you are the Black voice, you are the Black face, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I also can imagine that being in Vermont, you know, which is known to be pretty liberal, that probably made it a little easier because, you know, most people probably were on more of the side of, you know, of justice, I guess I could say, you know, versus if you were in a more, you know, conservative area at the time. But sort of feeding off of that though, like talk a little bit about maybe like code switching. Because code switching is, you know, I always find that interesting. Because, you know, we all within different careers, different spaces and whatnot, you know, like I can just imagine that, you know, I can imagine like that there had to be, you know, like some point to where you kind of wanted to sort of take a step back and be like, let me tell you how I feel.
Right.
Let ERIN from Richmond tell you something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. But you know, like what's some of your like coping skills when it comes to that, right? Of I guess going back to knowing that you have a job to do. Right. And sort of separating. But again, like as Max is saying, when something hits home, like when it's real personal, yeah, like how do you do it? Because we have the liberty here of not having to do that. You know, like of course, like there's some serious, you know, we know when to get serious and when to joke, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we do have that flexibility here being the format that we are. But I'm just curious if you could like maybe share a little bit more. Maybe you may have a story. You know, to where it was hard.
All my life.
Yeah, it was hard sometimes. But I think it's the same that I was talking about earlier with, you know, just kind of disconnecting. But that was, you know, that was hard, you know, when we're talking about issues affecting Black people, because some of these issues I've experienced myself, or my family has experienced, or, you know, a cousin, or, you know, an aunt, uncle. So like you know, it was hard to kind of to separate myself from that. And it also, at some point, it also felt like I was doing the Black community a disservice by disconnecting. Because I'm like, should I tap more into this? Or do I, you know, stay impartial and step back from it? So I kind of I struggled with that a lot on the job. And that was a daily battle. You know, what do I do? Do I tap in and really, you know, let the emotions flow when I tell the story, or do I take a step back and stay the, you know, the impartial, unbiased news reporter that I am? I do think that most times I took the latter. You know, would
you have to?
Yeah, right. That was the job at hand, and I definitely grappled with that the dichotomy of staying a professional news reporter and or being that personal Black person who has experienced these things. So that was tough. And I definitely, there were a lot of moments where I, you know, like I said, some days I would go home and just let it all out, you know, because I was like, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I don't know if I'm doing the Black community a service here. am I letting them down? You know, because again, the Black community in Vermont was so small.
Right.
And, you know, I'm like,
yeah, who you're reporting to makes a difference too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I wanted that small community to feel heard and seen. And sometimes I think to this day, I'm like, I don't know if did I help them in any way, or was I, you know, what would they say if I asked them, like, how do you think I helped or didn't help? You know,
but you know, I think that having that self-reflection is what makes a good person in general, right? Is when you question whether or not, what the healthy level of whether or not when you question whether or not you did a good job.
Right.
And when you mentioned earlier, just not all Black people being the same, I could relate in the sense that I was just raised a little north of Charlottesville, out in Greene County. And I've mentioned on the show before that I was certainly raised with to have self-respect. That was something that my parents instilled in me, and something that I kind of got by osmosis. I mentioned my grandmother earlier in the show, but never Black self-respect. And so I was ignorant about just a lot of things as it pertains to the Black community and different challenges and things like that until I got much older. And I think that to a degree, there is a bit of a blessing in that, because I didn't show up on different stages and platforms to be the Black spokesman or the female spokesman, or you know, I didn't show up for that. I showed up to do the best job that I was there to do, no matter who was in the room, right? And again, I think that there's an element of blessing in that, because it allows, I think, in my humble opinion, it allows us to be able to see and do as in this world as we're supposed to. It's not necessarily a Black thing. It ain't a white thing. It ain't a male thing. It ain't a female thing, but it's just a humankind thing. Right. So I certainly can relate to your responses there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. I'm curious on, where was your favorite place to report out of? Like any interesting story? Because I saw how Reno made you smile. So I can imagine you got a Reno
stories.
But, Reno's interesting.
Like, but what's been your, and you know, I'm not trying to incriminate you here in Charlottesville. I don't think you got to say Charlottesville, but I'm curious. Yeah, like, you know, out of your travels, like what maybe has been most memorable, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think the most my favorite place where I've lived and worked would be Vermont.
Okay.
Vermont was, you know, there were challenges there, like I brought up, but Vermont it's like a hidden gem, I think, in the country. I think a lot of people forget about it too, because I would tell people, like, oh yeah, I used to live in Vermont, and they're like, oh yeah, Vermont.
Where is that again?
Yeah, wait a minute, is that part of the United States? People forget about Vermont, but Vermont is this idyllic, just beautiful. It's kind of like Virginia when in terms of natural beauty,
right?
And actually, just
got a lot of pedestrians and bike riders there.
Yeah, I was about to say yes. Just like how Charlottesville has the downtown mall, we had something similar in Burlington, Vermont. So I actually think the same person created both. I think when you look at both, you'll see similarities. So I think the same person created both of those.
And is Burlington a college town?
It is. The University of Vermont is there.
Right. Okay.
And it's just beautiful. It's also on a Lake Champlain, which connects Vermont and New York. And it's just beautiful. Like when I got there, I was just like stunned, because I thought Vermont was just cows and and farmland, and most of it is, but Burlington is the biggest city in Vermont. And it's just beautiful. It really is. And I really had a great time there. And I think I met a lot of good friends there, and I felt at home, like, as soon as I got there. And it might have been the similarities between Vermont and Virginia that made me feel that way.
Okay.
I liked Vermont.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask because I've been looking at this tattoo that says "phenomenal" all show long.
Oh yeah.
what's the so you got to explain the backstory behind that.
Yeah. So people probably wouldn't guess this about me, but I actually have 7 tattoos.
Okay.
And people probably wouldn't guess that. And you pointed out one of them. It says phenomenal. And this is actually I really like the Phenomenal Woman poem by Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
So this is tribute to that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
I just there's not much else to it. I like that poem. I like what it represents and I like how it makes me feel when I read it. So I tattooed it on my wrist to remind me that I am a phenomenal woman.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the phenomenal woman that you're listening to is none other than ERIN Brown. She is NBC News anchor. And as we've been saying, this is Women's History Month. Yes. You mentioned Maya Angelou. So who's some of your inspiration?
Ooh, good question.
Because I can imagine, being in such a field, you may draw inspiration off of others that's done it before.
Right. That's a great question. And I don't know why I'm blanking.
Like a Barbara Walters, or Oprah Winfrey, somebody like that.
Yeah. Those are.
Or did you have a mentor?
A mentor. I've had a few mentors along the way. Just each stop along my journey, I've always kind of picked up a mentor. Most of them being women. And actually, when I interned at ABC News, I got to meet Robin Roberts.
I was going to say Robin Roberts. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Because for one, she was on ESPN at one time.
Right.
And then you mentioned Good Morning America earlier. Yeah, I love Robin Roberts.
It was so great meeting her. She's so sweet. I only got to talk to her for like a minute, but it was one of the best minutes. Yeah. She's such a sweet lady. I also got to meet Diane Sawyer, who is also, I think, a powerhouse in journalism. So it was.
Who's the best doing it right now?
Awesome. The best doing it right now?
Female journalist.
That's a good question.
Anybody?
I don't.
Yeah. No.
Gosh, I don't know. I also don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to.
Okay.
Show any bias.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think they're all doing a phenomenal job.
Cool. Yeah.
All of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. The only other thing that I had in mind, and because I think it's just so important to news right now, and and as comfortable as you are, because hopefully you feel like this is a safe space, like you're off the clock.
Right.
But but in the job that we all have, right? Whether it's here on the radio, it's on TV or whatnot, like the world is going through a lot right now. Even just last week, over the last couple of weeks, Charlottesville itself was like seemed like it was constantly being hit with some sort of drama, some sort of huge emergency response. And so I just kind of wanted your thoughts on that, on like the importance of having that job, of realizing that we're in like perilous times, right? And I know you have a job to do, but and I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it, but it's but at like at the same time, like I'm sure that the way that that you relay the information or something, like there has to be something inside of you that that knows how important what I'm talking about. Right now, like when the camera and the lights are on, it's like people need to know this. People need to hear this. And and even within that, like are there certain stories that you're able to stay away from, or certain stories that you maybe can navigate more towards, but I know I was saying a lot, but just trying to phrase it because there's so much right now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot.
And like the fact checking isn't what it should be, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just curious on
Fake news.
Fake news is rampant.
Right.
Like any of that. And thanks, Max. That's a big point. Right. It's like people don't trust any news source anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so how do you approach that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think your first question being, how do you convey importance or urgency when it comes to certain stories? Yeah, like for instance, UVA was on lockdown twice last week. First for the guy who was stopped by police at a traffic stop and then ran off and was eventually arrested. And then the second being there was a stabbing suspect on the run at UVA. He was also arrested, but and that incident actually happened while we were on the air. So, we're breaking into our coverage, telling people, okay, this is happening. UVA is telling you to shelter in place. There's a guy on the run with a knife. And at the same time, we're sending a crew to the scene. So we're letting the viewers know, we have a crew on the way. Stick with us. We'll keep you informed. So, in an instance like that, I do think that my demeanor changes a little bit when it comes to breaking news, and because I want people to know this is serious, this is urgent. It's happening right now. There's a directive from UVA to shelter in place. Please take that seriously. You want people to kind of feel the urgency in your voice and your demeanor and your delivery. So I try to do that. And I also watch that, growing up, watching the news with, the first incident that pops in my mind is 9/11. That was probably the first really big news story that I consumed as a child. I was 9 years old when 9/11 happened. And again, I remember just being so locked into the news anchors and what they were saying and how they were saying it, and their delivery, and
because on the other side of that, we're like, oh, this is serious, depending on how that delivery comes across.
Because if they just said it kind of cavalier and lackadaisical, it's like, oh, why are they acting like, is it not that serious? Like you're confused. But you could feel that with their delivery and their tone and their intonations and facial expressions. And I was watching that, and so I guess I kind of watched through observation. I mean, I learned through observation. And I definitely feel myself in instances where I'm reporting on things like the UVA shelter in place. I can feel myself. I can kind of feel myself going back to that little girl in the mirror, and I'm like, this is serious. You have to let people know, like you have to, you can't drop the ball on this. You have to convey the importance of this, just like I saw news anchors do on 9/11 and, Hurricane Katrina and, the Virginia Tech shooting. And, I watched all these events, and I was so carefully watching them and how they were telling me about a major event. And I want to do that, be that same voice for someone else sitting at home.
Because you're also dealing with everybody on social media becomes a news reporter.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That is
so you're battling that as well. Yeah. And so I have to ask you too, how do you react, or how do you respond, I guess, like when it comes to like the two instances that we just had last week, like you said? It's one of the big things that caused the uproar in the community is the feeling that the blackmail was reported on, or the reports on the blackmail were more harsh than the white male, right? So what's your methodology there? Like when it comes, and I'm curious that like if you ever get like a news flash, and does anything ever strike you wrong, or do you have to inflect a certain way? Like when it comes to making sure that, okay, we cover like, so you have a black male and a white male, both in trouble with the law, both are evading the law.
Right.
Like, so let's not make one necessarily sound worse than the other based on any stereotypes.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how do you handle that? Because that was a big thing last week. A lot of folks felt like, and I don't know if they were watching NBC or any other channel, but just in general, folks were like, ooh, well, like the black guy was being called this and that, and the white guy was like, didn't seem like a big deal.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think it's important. So for that example, like, I think both should be treated the same way. You know, so if we're going to say the black man's race, you know, if we're going to say, hey, it's a black man who's on the run, then we should also do that for the white man, you know, like, as opposed to just, oh, there's a black man on the run and then there's a man on the run, you know, well, we reported on the other man's race, so we should do the same, you know, just to keep it fair. And also people need to know that, because you're saying, if there's a man on the run, well, what does he look like? There's a lot of men out here, you know, like, who are we looking for? So
I think at one point there was a news release that said, and not by NBC 29, but said that they were looking for a black male in a gray hoodie. And I'm like, okay, you just like described most black males in Charlottesville. Right. But how much of what you all report, how much of the language that you all use when you report is language that is provided to you by, I guess, then the Virginia State Police who were handling that situation, or at least the initial encounters of that situation?
Right.
Because sometimes it's just like, I imagine it's just industry jargon or language. Doesn't make it right.
Right.
But a lot of your reporting and the language that you use is based on the information that you're given, right? You try to stay as closely to that as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
We're typically given that information either from Virginia State Police, Charlottesville, Albemarle County, UVA Police. So we're handed that information. Yeah.
Are there any kind of like corrective measures? Like, have you ever received something and been like, whoa, like we got to rewrite this, you know, like, you know, what kind of liberties are there when it comes to that? If, you know, if something feels off or seem off.
Right. That's a good question. Personally, I don't think I've come across that.
Okay.
In my career. But I think newsrooms, just generally speaking, we do have the liberty to, you know, rewrite things.
Okay.
And especially because a lot of the press releases that come to us are, we call it police speak. They're written in police speak, you know, they're not necessarily written conversationally. So we rewrite them anyway, because, you know, there's words like, you know, there's phrases like, oh, he fled on foot. And we're like, that's not very conversational. We don't say someone fled, you know, we say someone ran away or drove off. So we'll rewrite things like that. No, not throwing any shade at police. That's their job to write it like that. But it's our job to rewrite it and make it more conversational so that it hits the viewer's ear a little bit easier, better to understand.
Yeah, because they have to state it in a legal way,
right?
You know, to where it's not incriminating and not all that good stuff. Yeah. So wow, thanks for all this insight. This is awesome.
No, you're welcome.
And definitely hope this is not the last time we get to sit and chat.
Absolutely.
And talk about your work. So you know, lastly, I heard you mention, you know, Charlottesville seems like a good, comfortable place to sort of, you know, stake roots, as Max was saying.
Yeah.
But in general, like, what do you want to leave us with? Like, what should we be on the lookout for? Like, sort of what's next? Is it, you know, like, are there further goals in your journalism career that you know that you're working on? Or?
You know, I mean, right now I'm planning on staying put. You know, I'm planning on being in Charlottesville for a while. You know, Virginia is home. Richmond is home. You know, it's not too far away. So that was the main draw to Charlottesville, was being not too far from Richmond and where I grew up. So, you know, I'm really happy to be here. It's been such a long journey, you know, 10 years, and to get the opportunity to come home, even though Charlottesville itself is not where I grew up, but I still call it home because it's Virginia. You know,
Central Virginia.
Central Virginia. Yeah. So, you know, even just to have that opportunity is a blessing. I feel like I feel like for a lot of journalists that is their goal, to go back home. Some of them get it, some of them don't. So for me to get that opportunity
Yeah.
is it's a blessing and it's beautiful. And I don't ever take for granted the fact that I'm a journalist in my home state.
Yeah.
Because it's just and like I talked about earlier, like the struggle of hopping around to different cities and states and having to embrace all these new communities. And I didn't have to, I don't even have to try,
Right.
here in Central Virginia. It's just natural.
Yeah.
This is my home. This is my community. I came here with certain knowledge about the state, the different towns, the different schools and universities and the issues and the politicians. And so I didn't have to, do all that legwork. It was already there for me. And it was just, as soon as I got back to Virginia, it was just like it was like I was just hopping right back into it, like I'm
hit the ground running.
Yeah. And it's just it's been great. It really has been.
Awesome.
And I'm just so happy to be back in Virginia. It's a great place to grow up, which I did. And it was great that I left too, because when I left for as long as I did, I felt it makes that yearning for home even stronger. And that's really what I felt when I was in Illinois. I was like, man, Virginia is so much prettier than this. And I'm like, Illinois is nothing compared to Virginia. Like just the natural beauty, the history, we're right by, the nation's capital. Like we just have so much going on here in Virginia, and I just miss that. And I wouldn't have appreciated Virginia the way I do now had I not gone, had I not left.
That's important.
It is, and I'm so glad I had.
Lesson.
It is. I mean, there's no place like home. It's the cheesiest thing to say, but it's true. It's so true. There's no place like home, and I'm so glad I found my way back home.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you for your work. Thanks for being a trusted voice in our community.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm so happy to be that and to be here. So thank you for having me. This was fun.
Of course. All right.
Until next time.
Until next time.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories. More people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Miss Max.
Act like we never left. In the booth, in the building. So tell a friend, because we are in the last hour of the show, bottom of the show, top of the last hour. And if you've been listening, hopefully you've been edutained. And if you haven't, make sure you tell your folks, because they don't want to miss this, because we are joined right now with some major news, some major info.
That's right.
I mean, like Shorty did her kickoff.
Deal.
And props to all those who were able to attend that and who have been sharing the word and supporting thus far. But I'm talking about none other than ZYAHNA Bryant. She is here to discuss her election bid for the Charlottesville School Board. Congrats, Zah.
Thank you. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Anytime, when you reach out to us, if we got the time, it's always good conversation. It's always informative. So
this feels real quick, Charles, just as major as maybe your essay about the statue. Does it feel that way to you?
No.
Okay.
I think because it just feels like home. So it doesn't feel as, but it is because we haven't had a young person this young on the board and we need that. And I hope that the community feels that it's a new opportunity to have some new voices. So I hope that they feel equally as excited. I remember the statue conversation was really, we had a division down the middle. So I hope that this is a little more uniting.
Yes. Agreed.
And off of that, do you feel like that this is an extension of your youth advocacy?
Yes, absolutely. As I got to be a part of a 24-hour marathon of speakers that Angela Rye, Sora Joy Reid, and some others organized in response to the State of the Union. It was kind of like an alternative conversation. You don't have to watch the State of the Union. You could watch that. And I said on there that I do believe that young people are ready to lead. Like, I really, really do believe that, whether it's the young people across the country that are running for office, whether it's the youth collectives that have really emerged since 2020, even before, but especially since 2020, we're seeing it more. And like the young people who are at the high school level, who are in athletics, but who are also saying, like, I'm more than an athlete. I'm also a student leader. I'm all these things. Like, I've been really encouraged by just the power of young people. And I've also been encouraged by the adults who are saying things like Mr. Bryan always says, it's time for us to step aside and let the young people lead. So I don't know. It just feels like there's finally sort of an intergenerational understanding that we know that those who have come before us have prepared us for this moment and who have given us a lot of wisdom and knowledge and preparation, but also the understanding that we're ready to kind of step up and do some things that we haven't done before. And so I feel like now is a critical point when so many things are under attack, when so many conversations are shifting. I think now is the time for us to solidify what that youth movement means, like what it looks like, what it means. It moves away from just being in the streets and just protesting to implementing policy. And young people have been doing that, right? We have young congressional staffers. We have young people on Capitol Hill who are advocating and making change on the inside and the outside. So I feel like now is the time for us to show that we are strategic. We are young, and our youthfulness doesn't mean that we're not experienced, and it doesn't mean that we don't have things to bring to the table. So I hope that it's clear that we're ready to do all things and use all the tools in our toolkit: protest, policy, and practice, community engagement, grassroots organizing.
Right. Well, you've said a lot there, because my next question, when you talk about the youth being ready to lead, is what equips them, in your opinion, to be ready to stand on the mantle, if you will, or be ready to step into a leadership position. But it's experiences, it's what they're currently dealing with. It's them being ready to step into a leadership role. It's new, it's vision. It's all these different things, right? And it's also us older people being willing to share the space with them and allow them to do that. So,
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we were just talking about Charlottesville Youth Council, you and I, before we went on air. And, that I was a part of that. And that was really impactful for me. It helped me understand order and like how power flows through our city. I'm a part of the best sorority. And so I know Robert's rules. I know, the things that I need to know about order and processes. And so I think like, when it comes to this moment, I think that there are so many different experiences that I have that I can say, like, wow, they've really shaped me into understanding what it means like to step up and serve and to do public service. And I do believe that when you're a servant leader, not just a regular leader, a servant leader, someone who prioritizes service, when someone taps you and says, it's time to serve, you just kind of do it. And I mean, of course you think about it, of course you're intentional about it, but Mr. Bryant came to me and he said, are you gonna do it? I've heard you might be thinking about it. And I said, let me get back to you. And I took a couple of weeks. And then the morning when I was gonna call him, he actually called me. And I was just saying to someone like, I'm gonna call Mr. Bryant today and tell him my decision about running for school board. And he called me back and he said, okay, ZYAHNA, are you gonna do it? I've talked to so-and-so. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I was gonna call you today. It's kind of crazy that you called me at the same time, but I know that Mr. Bryant and so many other elders from 10th and Page particularly have done so much to prepare me and other young people for moments such as these. I can't forget about being raised in the church. Like being raised in church is so important because into my story, because it has like shown me what it means to step up under pressure, under moments when I may not be as prepared to be called out or to, you know, to have to read a scripture or do something or give a prayer. Like those are just examples of what it means to be a servant leader. And so I'm just grateful for the people who trust in my leadership and who take the time to nurture me and give me the tools that I need to lead best, to tell me the resources that I need to consult. But also who believe that like, I'm gonna step up and do what I need to do. And they don't micromanage. They don't, you know, try to tell me, oh, this is the way, but they just give me the tools that I need. They point me in the directions that I need to be in. And I'm grateful for people like Mr. Bryant, my grandmother, you know, even my Uncle Marvin. I went to see him yesterday and we were just watching the TV and a special about the Charlottesville 12 came on the TV. It was a public access, one of those channels. And I was like, look at you on the TV. And he's like, yep, that's me. And I'm like, you're really living history. Like that's huge, you know? And I feel like when we really sit down and we really ponder upon it, and we really think about it, it's like, wow, like we really are among giants, people who have done so much. And so it's just really like an honor to be able to follow in their footsteps and extend their legacy. And I hope that's what I'm able to do.
And what vacancies about the vacancies on the school board?
So before we get to that though, you mentioned Mr. Brown a bunch. Somebody may not know who Mr. Brown is.
Right.
Like, so how about you just touch on like the footprints that he has left and like why his voice matters so much for those who don't know who Mr. Brown is.
Yeah, Mr. James Bryant is my cousin for one, but he's also a former school board member. He's a longtime educator, retired educator, guidance counselor, has worked when Miss Butler was speaking about partnerships earlier. He's been a big part of that, like bringing the community into the schools and making sure that students had accesses to the resources that they needed. So whether it was like Upward Bound or the things that we were organizing at Mount Zion to make sure that parents and students had all the tools that they needed to be successful in school, like Mr. Bryant has played a huge role in that. So if you don't know who Mr. Bryant is, you could probably Google him. He's there. He's done a lot and he continues to lead in the 10th and Page Neighborhood Association, just making sure that we're remaining in the know about the things that are going on in our community and making sure that that bridge is there between the elders and the young generation.
Yeah. And you mentioned your sorrow, like, so why'd you pick green instead of red for your campaign color?
Well, I believe that we know what red is associated with when it comes to politics, unfortunately.
Yeah, true that,
but I chose green because I believe in abundance and I believe that this community is over-resourced. We're a small community. I've said this before, I think on here, where we're a small community with so many nonprofits, so many resources, so much money. And I just believe that we have everything that we need in this community to take care of all the needs in this community. It's just a matter of connecting people in the places and the things that need to be connected. So that's what green is about. Green is about abundance. Green is about growth. And, you know, green is also about like positivity in the community. And I hope that that comes through.
Yeah. And Max, I know where you're about to go with it, but let me kind of preface it just with one more thing though, because ZYAHNA, you know, one of the things that came to my mind, you know, when I thought about your run for the school board is, you know, it's always interesting when someone who is legendary in one aspect decides that there is like another level or there's another stage or platform that they then need to be a part of. And when Max and I were talking about this, and I liken it to how sometimes when you're passionate about something and and you do something for the love versus it becoming a job, so to speak. And so even hearing what you just said, like I'm even thinking, all right, as important as ZYAHNA Bryant is, did it ever cross your mind to even make more sense to maybe train up someone to be like, hey, we need you to be on the school board because me as Zai, I gotta cover more than just the school board. You follow what I'm saying? So I'm curious your decision-making process, like when it came to, this is what I need to do next.
Well, I believe in being multifaceted. And so I think that my advocacy won't end because I'm on school board, and also that whole pouring into young people, it won't end because I'm on school board. I still have people that I'm fortunate enough to be in mentorship kind of opportunities with, and young people that I'm just always in communication with. Even if I don't hear from them for a couple of weeks, they're like, hey, Zai, let's talk. So we still check in. And I just feel like this is adding another layer to the ways that I'm able to contribute to those policies that are being made, right? It's one thing to leverage public comment and to go and speak at the end or the beginning of a meeting, but it's another thing to actually be there when the work sessions are happening and to have a real say, right? It's not just a public comment that's going to be addressed at the next meeting. It's when the budget is really being written out, when the policies are really being looked over, and when critical decisions are being made behind closed doors, I will be able to offer those comments that I would typically offer once a month during a public comment session. So that's kind of my thought process there. As I said, I do believe that there's a real close connection, or at least there should be, between our protests and our outside advocacy and our inside policy making. So I hope to be able to do that. I think that this is just a different level of training that it will require for me, even to learn the ways of how a school board is operating and how they're coming to the decisions and how they're moving as a board. But I do think that a first step was to have the student school board representatives be a part of the board. That happened while I was in high school. And now seeing that be a part of it, I'm like, okay, maybe we're ready for the next step. Maybe we're ready to have a young person actually at the table with the vote, right? And having that vote gives you a different level of power. And so I hope that the people that I'm able to be in community with, the parents that I see, the folks who call me or text me and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or do you know about this? Hopefully I can bring their voices into the room when they otherwise feel unrepresented.
And is that the only thing that you feel like maybe the school board, the decision makers are missing? Because generally when a person takes a position, runs for a position, that thing is missing something. I see something that I can add to it, something that they're not getting right or doing wrong.
Right.
And so when you kind of analyze what our school board is doing, what are they missing that you intend to add?
I think there are a couple of things. I think there's a transparency issue. I feel that the current board everyone was not there during the renaming process, but I don't know if y'all remember the school renaming process, but I remember a lot of online and offline conversations with folks who are just like, I don't understand why this is happening this way. I don't understand where these names came from. And whether the process was good, right, and good faith, and we trust that that the names were researched and thought about deeply.
And these are the two schools that were renamed here in the city.
Right. Yes. Regardless of how that happened, people are not clear on the process. And I do feel like there's a transparency issue with the board. And I do hope to bring that up to the board. And I have during school board meetings. I've said, hey, I just feel like sometimes we're not getting as much light as we should when it comes to certain issues. So I hope that transparency is brought to the board, and that's something that I hope to bring. Another thing is I hope that we think more about how we're engaging the community. I do think that school board members should be out and about. I don't think that, they should just come out when they're invited or when they're going to be honored at an event. I do think that whether it's a basketball game, but there's more than athletics, right? Whether it's a play or a musical, or whether there is something happening over at Lugo, like even if it's just a basic lunchtime conversation, I feel like our board should be engaged. I don't think it's necessarily missing for all of our members, but I do think that there are some members on the board who are not always out in the community as much as they could be, and I'd like to see it more. And I would definitely invite them to engage as much as they can in the future. And then the last thing I think that the board is missing is that I think that there's not as much consideration about parents of marginalized communities. I think we say it as a talking point, right? We're thinking about the people who are in the margins, and we're thinking about the parents who work multiple jobs. But what does that mean when you think about the fact that your monthly meetings are at 5 p.m.? I even rush to get to them. I'm like, I get off at 5. I don't know how I'm going to teleport, you know? So how are we really thinking about that in practice in the ways that we do things? I hope to bring that to the board. And I feel like Ms. Burns does that. I feel like Ms. Cooper does that. I feel like there are advocates on the board. Mr. Bryant did that during his time on the board, but we need more. And I think that if it comes from a different voice who's not currently on the board, maybe it'll be heard a little differently, and maybe we'll get that actual push to put some real changes behind it. Maybe the meetings need to be moved back 1 hour, though it may cause, you know, a little inconvenience for staff or for other board members. I do think that it might just open up an opportunity for so many people that we say are not in the room. We constantly say, who's not in the room, who's not in the room. Well, let's actually do something on a practical level to bring them in, or maybe even moving some of the board meetings around. Maybe every quarter there's a different location where the board meeting is that's a little more centralized, because CHS isn't the most central location. So these are just like practical things that I feel like I would raise as a concern if elected.
And Max, I think you were about to ask about the seats that's vacant.
Yeah, the vacancies. Do you have, how many seats are becoming vacant? And I get, do the school board seats represent certain areas of the city?
So all of our school board seats are at large. So we don't have like a word system or anything like that. And there will be 3 seats that are up for election. So far, 2 of the incumbents have said that they are going to run. That's Miss Lisa Larson-Torres and Miss Emily Dooley. Those 2 have said they're going to run. And we're still waiting to hear from Mr. Don Morse to know whether or not he's going to run, but his seat is also up for election. So there are 3 seats, and so far there are 4 candidates.
Which are?
Myself, Deshaun Cooper, the 2 incumbents, Miss Dooley and Miss Larson-Torres.
Awesome. Good stuff. You had said, so one of the things that you mentioned when you were talking about, you know, some of the improvements that you would like to see on the board, you know, being that the city is relatively small, you know, even when we're in comparison to, you know, the county that they're in of Albemarle, how they have different districts, and sometimes districts may have their own populace, they may have their own demographic that may have a lot in common. Whereas Charlottesville being small, it's still very diverse, right? Of students that you have to cover. So I'm curious, I'm like, what's your thoughts about that to someone who may be on the school board or maybe a city rep in general, right? And then they may say, well, that's not really my lane. I don't feel comfortable in that community. What the case is, like, but they may say, but here's my strong points. Here's what I can do. Like, do you feel like that is a fair trade or a give and take, or do you? Yeah, just give me your thoughts on that.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So you're saying to like a school board member or a city person who's elected, who's like, I may not feel as comfortable in that part of the community, but I am strong with these folks over here. Like is that what you're asking?
Kind of, or I think more so if someone was to say that, like, that's not like my skill or like my strong point to kind of be out at public events, you know, maybe they get nervous, maybe they have anxiety. I don't know the thing. But, you know, but I'm just saying, because I'm sure you're going to get some of it. You're going to say, if some folks are going to say, it's just not me, I'm just not comfortable doing that. You know, so I'm curious.
It's real.
How you would rebut that?
I would say I would invite them in, because, you know, we're working on growth and things. So call-ins, where I would invite them to just really think about who they're representing, right? If you are an at-large board member elected to serve an entire community, it is critical that you are in spaces that represent the entire community. And whether that is, it can't be a singular event, because everything is not for everyone, but that unfortunately means you have to do a little more work and go around to different spaces. You know, like if it's not a farmer's market one week, then maybe next week it's a church, or, you know, like you have to be somewhere. You have to be somewhere, and you have to be engaging with folks, because unfortunately, the same way that some people may not be as comfortable in community spaces, some people are not that comfortable with public speaking. And so if it's up to them to, you know, be that change, and they're like a little anxious about giving a public comment in front of people that's going to be recorded and all of the things, then we miss out on that opportunity to connect. So that is why it's so critical for us to be in the community as advocates or as elected officials.
Thank you.
So you do realize that I'm sure there are a lot of people who are intimidated about the idea of your presence being on the school board. You, I'm sure you know that, right? So I guess my question is, what those folks are probably wanting to hear, maybe, is how ZYAHNA Bryant will be a bridge builder, how you will help to create some unity, coalesce amongst the board, and be willing to work across aisles, different opinions, ideas, and things like that.
Well, luckily I have
Because we don't want to
experience with
scare the you know what people, right?
Well, I mean, sometimes we have to question our fear, right? But I would say that I have experience with working across different sections of community, right? Whether it's organizing direct actions. I mean, if you've ever been to one of the direct actions I've been a part of organizing, you've seen many different types of people from many different walks of life, even from different stances on single political issues, but still willing to unite around the idea that all people deserve to be able to thrive in our community. And so if that's our uniting point, then I think I can sit down with anyone.
There you go. Good response.
Yes, indeed.
And as long as that is their motive as well.
And even if it's not, maybe by the end of that conversation, they might think about things differently. And, you know, sometimes we have to step into that role of being the conversation haver with people who may not be like in the spaces to have those conversations any other time. So maybe you have to be that person to shed light on something a little differently and push back a little bit, but also understand that like people do have different opinions and that's okay. It's a part of, you know, growth. It's a part of advocacy, but it's a part of community too. And I hope that people give me the opportunity to show the experiences that I have with doing that. And I hope that they give me the opportunity to be in community with them. They invite me to have conversation with them.
Yeah, awesome. And we are talking to ZYAHNA Bryant and discussing her candidacy for the Charlottesville City School Board. So ZYAHNA, you know, the big news right now that no school district is safe from is the threats that are happening to our Department of Education, right? The threats that are happening to anything DEI, right? And of course, like that's a broad topic, right? Like that can mean a lot of things. But when you think about the work that you want to do and get done, I guess from a strategic standpoint, like how do you feel that it needs to be approached during this time in history, knowing what we're dealing with politically, knowing that we're in a state that, you know, that the Board of Visitors at our state university just made a major, shift, knowing that they're applying pressure to our public schools. Yes, when you look at your goals and you think about the political landscape, like what's some of your strategies there?
Well, first I'll say there's power in naming. And so I feel like sometimes when we just say DEI, we actually forget what it stands for. So, you know, it does stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which all sound like positive things to me. And so I think it's really unfortunate that people can see something so positive, such as having people who have been left out included, having people who look different than them included. It's sad that they see that as negative and that they want to attack that. But what we can do as a response is we can remember that in the fiscal year of 24-25, Charlottesville City Schools only received $618,000 from our federal government for its budget, right? So that's about 0.2% of the budget. And so I think it's important to remember, like, while funds are under attack and while all these things are happening, we have, like I said before, an over-resourced community, and we are a small town with a lot of resources. And so I hope, as I said at my launch, that we lean in during this moment and we find people who have resources to step up and say, hey, I want to give more to the schools. I want to do more to help the schools. People who have the resources of time or of connections and partnership and mentoring abilities. I hope that they lean in and say, hey, there's something I can offer to the schools. At the end of the day, regardless of what happens in DC tomorrow, next week, next month, we do know that there are students who need to learn and there are students who deserve a quality education. And we also know that there are teachers who are put on the front lines every day to educate those students and who have the direct kind of facing with those students. They take on like some of the mental health concerns that students are dealing with. They take on so many of the other outside home life struggles that students bring into the classroom. And so as long as we continue to support our educators, support our schools, support our administration and our students, I think we'll be okay. And I think we can get creative in this moment with some of the solutions that we come up with.
So it's not, I'm sorry, but before we leave that, were you going a different direction? Okay, I was going to ask you, because it's not just DC, of course. It's you know, it's also Richmond,
in the state, right?
Right. So, but then I'm also delighted to also hear you say how we individually can step up. Now, of course, you know, like there's a lot of us that are already strapped, like when it comes to at least the monetary side of things, and then on top of it, we may say, okay, well, I'm paying my taxes, but they just don't want to use my taxes towards, you know, education the way that you know, like that I wish they would have, right? But in saying all that though, regardless of what happens, talk a little bit more about the onus of community, right? Because you are, you know, running for this position, this board, but you know, I'm curious your thoughts on, regardless of what happens politically, what's the ask of the community, of families, because, you know, families, you know, contribute to you know, to what our community looks like, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I want you to touch on that when it comes to regardless of what's happening politically, what we should be asking of our parents, families, community.
Yeah, I think we all play a role. I listened in earlier when Ms. Butler was speaking, and, you know, y'all talked about families and how it's the role, it so much starts at home. And I also say that oftentimes it feels like a blame game. Like sometimes in some of these conversations, it can feel like the schools are blaming the parents and the parents are blaming the schools, and each side make valid points, right? Like the parents can say, well, I'm working all the time. You know, I have so many financial constraints. And so it's putting me in a position where I can't necessarily be all the places or do all the things with regard to school. And there are educators who can say, well, if you don't do your part at home, then I'm having to catch up, you know, once they get into the classroom. So there are valid points on both sides. What I do think that can happen is that we can lean on so many of those partnerships that already exist, and we can look at the models that are working well and extend them and expand them. I think City of Promise is a great example. I'm a product of City of Promise. I was a part of it growing up in the 10th and Page neighborhood. I am grateful for people like Sarad who always brought me into spaces, whether it was lobbying at the General Assembly in like Walker and Buford, or whether it was like starting a youth council and being a part of the youth council that they started. And I was a little late to that, but Raylaja was a part of that, and other young people in the community were leading that. So that's just an example of how like there were so many leadership opportunities afforded to me at a very young age. It was people like Sarad who encouraged me to be a part of the Charlottesville Youth Council, which then started my journey in like, you know, boards, committees, public advocacy in that sphere. So I feel like when we have partnerships that are working well, it's important for us to continue to pour into them.
Absolutely.
Pouring into, you know, organizations like the United Way, looking at groups like Piedmont Housing Alliance. Like there are so many organizations that are doing great work. And I think that they're helping to bridge that gap to support the parents so that they can have that healthy home life for their students. And then we have people who are going into the actual schools and volunteering to make sure that there's that healthy school life in the building for students to be a part of. So I just think that if we can continue to everyone find what they can contribute and give what they can, that's big. I also want to emphasize that budget season is important. When we talk about, I pay my taxes because I pay mine too, and I see them going up and up and up, and I'm like, dang, like, but I do know that during budget season, it's critical for us to be at the school board meetings or at the city council meetings and giving our take on the budget. If we feel like city council isn't giving enough to the schools, then that's our moment during public comment or through writing emails or meeting with our elected officials to remind them that, hey, I'm paying these taxes and I would love to see more of those funds allocated towards the schools. We have those opportunities to advocate for those things.
Thank you.
I actually have a few questions. I guess the first is whether or not you've sat down with any of the current school board members and kind of address the direction of the school board and you know, your stance on different things. And
yeah, I've been able to talk with a couple
bread, as we say.
Yeah, I've been able to talk with a couple school board members, and I do feel like I've been pretty consistent with kind of like my ideas and things that I would like to see differently. And so I hope to continue to have those meetings. I know I look forward to meeting with Mr. Myers in a couple weeks, and I look forward to meeting with Ms. Dooley and Ms. Larson Torres as well, just to hear like some of their ideas and what they're hoping to bring if they stay on the board.
Okay.
I do think that those meetings are critical, and I've been spending a lot of times meeting with like parents and students more recently, because they're like, you're running for school board and here are my ideas. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear them. So that's kind of been the past couple of weeks, but I do hope to meet more with current school board members in the coming few weeks, and even with Dr. Gurley if possible, because I want to know like, what are the plans for next school year as we start to look ahead. We're now spring break for college. So spring break will be coming soon for our K through 12 students. So there's already that like returning the corner to next year kind of vibe. So I'm hoping to be a part of those conversations to see what they have in store for next year. And I've been at a lot of the budget meetings and work sessions and tuning in online and in person. So I've been seeing some of the things that they're hoping to bring into the schools next year. I'm really excited about this like medical course that it's going to be happening at CHS to get students more like in the know about medical terminology and to prepare them to do either CNA or practical nursing. I'm excited about the new opportunities that will be at K-Tech. Like, I think that there are so many new things that are happening, and that should be happening. Like, schools should be growing and meeting the times. And so even when, again, there are so many attacks on our education system and it's looking a little dark for maybe first-gen students who are looking to go off to college, hope is not all gone, but there are some questions about funding, resources, and things that will be available. It's good to see that the schools are stepping up to fill in those gaps and provide more practical forms of training for, you know, direct jobs and careers right after high school if they don't choose college.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, if I can interject there, Max, I heard you mention K-Tech, for instance, and as you said, we had Miss Butler on the beginning of the show. You know, like a lot of what gets talked about in forums of candidates and stuff, and even at the meetings, a lot is policy. You know, for the overwhelming majority, but especially since COVID, everybody has recognized a shift in the attentiveness and the outcomes of our students. So what about like just the engaging of the students?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that sitting down with students is so important. Like being able to volunteer and be around them is so key. And even if you're not in the schools volunteering, like if you're in the community and you see a young person and you just get their ear for a few minutes, like just hearing what their experiences are like in school is really important. I'm excited to see that there are like so many different things happening on the division level, like in central office. Like there are coat drives, there are there's the community dinners, like where parents are cooking with their students at Lugo. I saw Chef G was doing that. So there are like different things that are going on to engage them. I also saw that Mr. Rod, as many people know him, posted on Facebook, like they're looking for gift cards, or if you own a business, like reach out to the school and offer like a small gift card or something for the students, because those incentives are key to keep them engaged, especially around the end of the school year. And it is true, like as it gets warmer and like spring break happens and all of the things, it's like really exciting to be outside. We've been inside all winter, it's been cold, but now there's sunlight. And so just keeping that attention and keeping that engagement there is key, especially also during like standardized testing time, SOL tests, or the end of year tests that come around. I think that having those gift cards would be something that I wish I had when I was in high school. And I'm really excited to see that that's a thing. So I'm not sure how I can give that information to you, but I saw a post on Facebook, so I could share that with you. But we definitely want to be able to give back to our students the best that we can. And when we give those positive reinforcements, I think they're more encouraged to keep doing positive things in the school.
Yes, indeed.
One of the things that is always nagging me whenever I see our own step out into these leadership roles is what they'll be subjecting themselves to. And at some point or another, we saw this certainly when Nakayo served on city council, is that you will be villainized, and you will especially be villainized if you are telling the truth. And as is my same concern for you. And so my question is, your plan for handling that. Because if you win, it is inevitable that that will happen. If you are outspoken, if you are too loud, if you tell the truth, if there's the interpretation that you're advocating for one people group more so than the other.
Right. Well, I would start by saying that over the past few weeks, something that's been playing in my head, I heard someone say it during a church service, and it's just been replaying, is that you had a purpose before anyone had an opinion. And like, I feel like that's so powerful, because it's like, no, when you really think about it, like, I really did have a purpose that was like ordained in me for my life. And so as long as I'm walking in that purpose, working in that purpose, like, I'm good. Like, and then I also think that being an activist first has really given me some good training. I will say that. Like, there have been times where I've been villainized. There have been times where people have tried to rise up against me, and each and every time I made it through. And I think that that is, us making it through is a powerful testament to how we are powerful people if we really step into our power and believe that we are powerful. And people don't come against you unless you are powerful. People don't try to just shade you or make you feel bad or try to tear you down if they don't see you as a powerful person. So I just count it all as a blessing to be in the space that I'm in. And I really have so much joy in this moment, because I know that I'm going to be okay. And I know that I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I know that there are so many people in the community who have poured into me and who have helped me come to this place. And as long as I also keep my boots on the ground or whatever and stay in tune with community, I think I will be able to represent their voices and bring them into the spaces. And I don't want to speak for them. I actually want to make it easier for them to speak for themselves. I want them to have the mic. I want them to be at the meetings and give the public comments or write the emails. I want to continue to empower people who have for a very long time been, you know, pushed to the sides and who have had that empowerment taken away from them. So that's my goal. That's my purpose, I believe. And I feel like as long as we stay on that, we'll be okay. Attacks may come, but, you know, they don't last always.
Right.
Tough people do.
Right. True. Got two more things. And so this is more so, Zai, just to be able to give you an opportunity to explain yourself. But and do you think in the face of dealing with that type of pushback that you can still work alongside to get things done with the other members of the school board?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The school board moves as one board, and that's not that everyone can't have their own opinion, but our Charlottesville school board has been united in the way that they move as one board and they move as one voice. And so I hope to be able to bring a little background, you know, information to that voice to help that voice sound a little bit more, to sound stronger and to sound a little bit more inclusive. But at the end of the day, the board is the board. And so I understand that I would be one of multiple people who are making those decisions and who are casting those votes. So I hope to just be a better part of the collective.
And then finally, I'm sure there are some people wondering if ZYAHNA Bryant, born and raised out of whatever neighborhood, Charlottesville's own young lady who authored the essay that helped to get the Lee statue removed, has the capacity to advocate on behalf of all Charlottesville school system students.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I do believe so. I mean, that's going to be up to the voters to decide in November. I hope that they agree with me, but I do know that regardless of where you come from or what your parents' political views are, your own political views, as some students have them at very young ages, like, everyone deserves to be in our schools, to feel safe, to have access to what they need. And regardless of what color you are or what you come from, I do know that there are great schools in our district and they offer great things. And people often try to say like, oh, public schools are not that great. I'm going to put my kids in private school. And as someone who started in private school and then went to public school, I can say that our public schools are very, very strong. And we need to continue to support them to keep them at their strongest. So I look forward to supporting all students. I feel like, again, people say, well, why are you only worried about the marginalized all the time? Because science, we love science, and statistics have proven that when those who are at the furthest part of the margins, those who are the furthest pushed out, feel supported, the entire community does well. So if I am advocating for the students who are often left out of these conversations, it's because I have the long-term goal in mind of everyone being supported when those who are on the outside are brought into the center as well.
You know, that is a very educated opinion. And I say that very purposely. I chose my words very carefully because we are living in a climate right now to where, like we said, diversity, equity, inclusion has become a bad thing.
Right.
Like, so in your educated opinion, why do you think it's seen as a bad thing? I mean, like, you know, I know we all have our own opinions, and I may be asking, you know, a question that I already know the answer to, but I'm just curious though, you know, because like what you're running for to represent all and to make sure that, you know, that the resources needed are provided for all, right? Like that is something you're gonna come up against, that there's gonna be some people who can't explain why diversity, equity, inclusion is a bad thing.
Well, I think you might have actually answered your own question, because you said I'm advocating for all, and diversity, equity, and inclusion means to have all, to have diverse spaces with people who are from different parts of our community, different parts of our society included. It is about inclusion. Inclusion is about everyone feeling safe, everyone feeling like they have a voice, everyone having agency and power. And, you know, equity is about making sure that the people who are at the lowest have what they can have what they need to have to be at an equal playing field. And so it's not about just equality. Equality is great. We need that on the foundational level, but we also need equity to make sure that everybody is on an equal playing field. And I think that graphic where the students are standing on the different, I don't know what they're called, like podiums and standing up, like I feel like that's so powerful because it actually like shows you a visual of what that looks like. So as long as everyone can be on an equal playing field, as long as everyone can come into the building with a clean slate, I feel like then our schools will be amazing. And they have been amazing up to this point. And so I feel like diversity, equity, and inclusion is naturally a part of that. If we want the schools to thrive, that's naturally a part of it. And if people cannot explain their hate, then perhaps they need to do some work.
That's what I was getting at.
Because if you can't explain to me why diversity, equity, and inclusion is a negative thing, then perhaps we need to read, do a little research. Maybe we need to just do a little bit of like meditation. I don't know what it is, but there's some soul searching that needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlottesville is always so interesting too, you know, Zion Max, when it comes to that, because it, you know, like we have been ran by quote unquote Democrats, progressives, liberals for, you know, for pretty much long as we can remember. But then yet we still seem to run up against this wall or hit this glass ceiling of it's still like the agenda. It's like you would think the blue dot in the South, quote unquote, could work together better, could get more done. And it wouldn't be as much complaints as far as like how much we've progressed. But still like a lot of discontent, you know, and, you know, I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that, you know, as well as just, it's, you know, I guess my point is that it's not always enough to just say, hey, like I'm a Democrat or, you know, whatever the case is, like there's some work that goes behind that. And unfortunately, I think we have like a lot of unsaid discrimination that, you know, like that absolutely still happens. You know, folks still want to put some other folks in their place, even though we say, and on paper, it looks like Charlottesville is the place to be when it comes to, you know, being that progressive small town, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I know that's, I'm kind of just thinking out loud, but I know that's something that we have to work through and something that has to be addressed, because that's what's not going to make sense sometimes. It's like, as what you're saying, it makes sense and it should make sense. It's like, there's gonna be times where it's going to be like, wow, like, so why isn't this message like sort of resonating? It doesn't seem to be resonating, but you know, but it on paper it should be. You know, I thought we were all on the same page here. You know,
I remember I'm always reminded that the personal is political, and I feel like a lot of times people will say, I'm not political, I don't want to do politics, it's not my thing. But there's politics with a capital P and politics with a lowercase p. And so when we think about what politics means, our ways of life, our sets of beliefs, the ways that we govern ourselves in community is all political. And so I hope that we walk towards these uncomfortable conversations, just as we're doing right now on air. Like, I hope that we sit and we really think through, what all of these things mean and how they really impact students, how they impact our community, because sometimes we hear things and they've been polarized so much that we hear something and our ears just turn off. Like we don't even want to engage with it. And so I've even gotten to a point sometimes where I'm like, oh my goodness, they're attacking DEI again. I don't want to hear it. But I do know that there's power in really sitting with each other and understanding where everyone is coming from and understanding and unpacking really why we believe certain things about other individuals in our community. I think when you do that, you get a better sense of what your own politics are, what your own actual, beliefs are, because when it comes to political parties, there's one side of the aisle and then there's the other side, but we all have our own opinions of single issues that may not align with either of those parties. So when you have your own sense of what you believe and why you believe it, I think you become a stronger, active participant in community.
Awesome. Thank you for that. If Max doesn't have anything else, since we're close to the end of the show, I have something that I want to leave the folks with, and of course, any last words you have for folks going into supporting your campaign. But this is Women's History Month, and so we were purposeful by having the guest on that we have on, and so happy Women's History Month to you.
Thank you.
Directly, personally. But I wanted to ask, who's a big inspiration to you right now as you delve into this stage of your career, of your work, because on your webpage you mentioned your family legacy, including your great grandmother, Thelma Townsend Hagen, and so so maybe it's her, but I'm curious, who you may want to shout out, as we celebrate Women's History.
Yeah, there are so many people. Wow. I hate starting to name names outside of my family, but I will definitely start with my great grandmother, Thelma Townsend Hagen. She was a fierce advocate for education. She was the mother of 2 of the members of the Charlottesville 12. And if you ever see that photo of the boys walking up the stairs with the 2 moms, my great grandmother was one of those women. And it's framed in Trailblazer Elementary, I do believe. And I learned that legacy while I was at Trailblazer as a student. I went home and I was like, I saw this name and that sounds like Gaga. So can you tell me a little bit about it? And that was such a powerful moment, because I was able to learn about my own family legacy just from being at school and paying attention to, social studies and history and the things. So her spirit and her advocacy through being a president of the NAACP local branch, or just in community and advocating for various things. Even in the 10th and Page neighborhood, our neighborhood association is partly named after my great grandmother. So that's just a powerful legacy that I'm grateful to have be a part of my family lineage. I'm inspired by, of course, her 2 sons, Marvin and William Townsend, who were 2 of those first 12 students to integrate schools. I'm inspired by my nene, my grandma. She is the president of the 10th and Page Neighborhood Association and has been for as long as I can remember, when I was really, really young, and continues to stand up and be in all the spaces, even the uncomfortable ones, and asking the questions and putting herself in that position to represent the people who may be elders and may not be able to be in the space at the time physically, but always bringing their concerns into the space. And I appreciate how much she shows up even when other people aren't showing up. She's always there. And so that's a real inspiration to me. My mom, she works at City of Promise. She's a pathway, a Dream Builders pathway person. So she's not necessarily a pathway coach working directly with students, but she works with the entire family. She works with the parents who are, needing help with housing navigation or all of the things. So I think that's really powerful, and I'm inspired by her. I'm inspired by so many of my peers, people like Tanisha Hudson, people like Nakia Walker, people like Raylaja Waller, who is a pathway coach at City of Promise, but is also doing so much positive work in the community. I just am inspired by the Black women who in our community do not get the roses, the flowers that they deserve, but who are always there. And sometimes they even start to kind of blend in, because it's we know they're going to be there, right? It's just expected that they're going to be there. But with that responsibility to always show up comes with so much work on the back, and so you're carrying so much when you're always expected to just be there and people just know you're going to be there. So I just want to say that there are so many powerful people in our community who are doing great work. And if I didn't name your name, please don't feel away, because once we start naming names, that's when we get in trouble. But I will say that I'm grateful for everybody who's playing their part and doing something to make our community better. It makes all of us better. We all benefit from it. And I hope this Women's History Month, y'all receive your flowers. And if you don't, please know that we see y'all and we appreciate y'all.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And lastly, how can folks reach you? What do you want to let them know about supporting your campaign?
If you want to support my campaign, you can go to ZYAHNA BRYANT for CCS.com. That is where my full platform is. That is where anything you want to know about my family legacy or my background and what makes me qualified as a 24-year-old to be in the seat, you can find all of that there. And you can also reach out to our email at ZYAHNA4CCS@gmail.com. So please reach out. Let's be in conversation. And of course, you can volunteer. You can donate on that website. We need all of the support that we can get. So thank you. And I look forward to hopefully doing well in the election in November. So thank y'all for this platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you as always. Ms. Beth, you want to take us home?
Yeah, there's not much more to add, honestly. Of course, I'd never want to end the show without thanking our listening audience.
Oh, yeah.
Special thank you to our guests. Thank you so much, ZYAHNA, for coming to talk to us about your campaign and what you're advocating for. And we really do wish you the best of luck and hope you come out with the victory on this.
And you've been getting a lot of love, a lot of support online.
Thank you all.
Yeah. And to the IMHO family, we love you. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.
Where did it go? Did I leave it in the cold? Please give it back.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.